friends. I hope you like this story. It won a Caldecott Medal for good pictures. It's called Make Way for Ducklings. Do you remember ducklings are baby ducks? Let's check it out. Make Way for Ducklings by Robert McCloskey. I like the way he drew the pictures with a pencil. He sketched all the pictures. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard, that's a kind of duck, they were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a good place, Mrs. Mallard said, "It's no good." There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise her family near foxes and turtles. Because guess what? Foxes and turtles might try to get her eggs. When the two ducks flew, boys and girls, did you know ducks could fly? We usually see them waddling on the ground, but they do fly. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. They came to a city called Boston. There was a nice pond right in the middle of the public garden. And there was a little island in the pond. They were very happy to rest. "The very place to spend the night," said Mr. Mallard. Quack, quack. So down they flew. Okay, so they're in the middle of a park. The next morning they fished for their breakfast in the mud. But they didn't find much. So boys and girls, have you ever seen ducks go underwater like that? They're searching down at the bottom of the pond looking for maybe some bugs to eat or some food. But they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to leave, a strange, enormous bird came by. Boys and girls, do you see? It's a boat, and that's a swan, but it's not real. The ducks think it's a real bird. The enormous big bird was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. Quack, quack. "Good morning," said Mr. Mallard, being polite, using good manners. The big bird was too proud to answer. It's not even real. But the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water, and the ducks got another breakfast, even better than their first breakfast. "I like this place," said Mrs. Mallard. "Why don't we build a nest and have our ducklings right here in this pond? There's no foxes or turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better?" "Good idea, said Mr. Mallard. Okay, now boys and girls, if you're in a park, there's lots of people doing different things. "This is a good place," said Mr. Mallard. "But look out!" squawked Mrs. Mallard. "You'll get run over." And when she got her breath, she said, "This is no place for babies with those horrible things rushing around. We'll have to look for somewhere else." So they flew over Beacon Hill and around the State House, but there was no place there. They're flying over the city looking for a place. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. They flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mr. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice, quiet place." Do you see the island? "It's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Miss Mallard. She remembered the peanuts. "That looks like just the right place to hatch ducklings." They chose a cozy spot and settled down to build their nest. Can you see her on her nest? And just in time, because they were starting to molt. Boys and girls, did you know that ducks molt? That means they lose the old feathers and they get new feathers. All their old feathers were falling off, and they could not fly again until they got new feathers. But of course they could swim, and one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and they met a policeman named Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that they came to see Michael every day. After Mrs. Mallard laid 8 eggs, can you see them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She couldn't go visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She only got off the nest to drink water or have her lunch, or to count the eggs to make sure they were still there. One day the ducklings hatched. First came Jack, then Cack, then Lack, then Mack, then Knack, then Whack, then Pack, then Quack. They have rhyming names. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. One day Mr. Mallard decided he would take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like, so off he set. "I'll meet you in a week at the public garden," he said. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," she said. "I know how to take care of children." She taught them how to swim and dive. She taught them to walk in a line, to come when they were called, and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. When at last she felt satisfied, she said, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just like their mother taught them. And they swam to the opposite bank. There they came onto the land and waddled along until they came to the highway. Uh-oh, boys and girls, look. See all the cars? Miss Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Cack, Jack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Miss Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. They made so much noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then he beckoned. He called them with his other hand, the way policemen do, and Mrs. Mallard and her ducklings crossed over. Oh, she was lucky Michael helped her. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down the street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. He called Clancy at the headquarters and said, "Clancy, there's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "What?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned onto the street, with all her babies marching in line behind her. You see, the people are surprised to see the mother duck and ducklings going down the street. Everyone stared. "Isn't it amazing?" the man said. "Well now, ain't that nice?" said a lady. She was so proud. She tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. When they came to the corner, the policemen stopped the cars so they could march across the street. Do you see them? Right into the public garden. Inside the gate, they turned around to say thank you to the policemen. The policemen smiled and waved goodbye. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them. Do you see? Just as he promised. The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day long they follow the swan boat and eat peanuts. And when night falls, they swim to their little island and go to sleep. The end. I hope you like this story.